Yeah, depersonalization is more a disconnect from yourself. So the way I think of it is a disassociation from your identity, your memories, feeling like you're maybe outside your body. Whereas a derealization is more of a disconnection from the world, like from the outside world. Feeling sort of like I would put it as inside a bubble or like a snow globe. And you feel like, yourself is there, but your access to reality or the world or people is fuzzy in some way. Yeah, so the snow globe is what I often use to describe to somebody what it feels like having like this combination of both derealization and depersonalization. Maybe more so the derealization aspect, because it feels like I know I'm in here, but like it's just accessing what's outside. I can see it and I know it's there and I know it's real, but it just doesn't, I can't quite access it. Like I can't grasp it really. And generally, I would say that it feels like a numbness. You can almost feel the numbness, like physically, but also like mentally and emotionally, I would say. It's just like an overall numbness. Like sometimes I'm a little bit like hesitant to explain it that way, because it's not that like, it's not that I don't have like deep feelings about things. Sometimes I feel like maybe it's just like a over intellectualization of things. Like before feeling it, I have to like know it. And before like to know it, I have to like over analyze it and try to like see it from all different angles. And when I see it from all different angles, it's like the good, the bad, the ugly. And I can't just like see something in this very straightforward way and ask myself, like, how do I feel about this as like me, a person with a valid perspective? It's more like, what's the God's eye view, or like what's the bird's eye view of this scenario? Like I want to know all facets and like all aspects of it, which of course is impossible. Like nobody could do that. But I think that it takes away beauty from things, but it can also make things that are bad better. But sometimes it's just maybe a bit of a coping mechanism, like, things aren't internalized as much. And in some ways, the things that like happen to me feel like they're not to me. And it just kind of makes it an objective fact. And then it's like, well, I know that this happened, but it feels so distant. Yeah, like I guess you could also like use the metaphor of like a thin film that's just between me and everything. And then there's this thought of like, am I trying to get out there? Am I trying to like access what's out there? Or like, is it just that like everything there doesn't feel quite real? Or is it more like what's inside isn't quite real? Appreciating nature too sometimes feels a little bit harder. Like I look at this beautiful scene as I'm like at the top of a mountain or in front of this like beautiful beach. I love the beach. And sometimes it feels kind of more static or more fuzzy or more dead in some way than it really is. Like I feel like it's like diluted in color. It's not as vibrant as I know it really would be to other people, just based on like maybe how I experienced things as a child, like comparing it to that, or comparing my like initial reaction to a scene compared to somebody else who's next to me that's like, wow, look at this beautiful, scenery, like look at this beautiful mountain. I don't think it creates as visceral of a reaction from me. So I kind of envy that a little bit. Bright lights definitely make me feel it. A lot of like commotion and kind of like a lot of sounds mixing together and like bright lights, like department stores basically, is what really makes me feel this sense of like disconnect. And yeah, there's something about like fluorescence and the migraines, like sometimes it just induces headaches and migraines. And a friend of mine who has DPDR or has experienced it, him and I both have what are called ocular migraines. So it's essentially a migraine, but like it's your vision is affected and it's induced by fluorescence. So I don't know if it's related, but it just seemed like such a bizarre coincidence because I've never heard of anybody else who had DPDR or ocular migraines. And then I met somebody who had both and I was like, this is too unreal. There's no way to really like put the whole thing in one or two sentences, but it's really, really, really hard to explain. Yeah, so I graduated from college, from undergrad around 2015. And I think I was a philosophy major, spent a lot of time thinking about deep questions, was always really drawn towards, thinking about meaning and being and purpose. And then I had to start in the working world as like a real human. And I just felt a sense of like disconnection. I couldn't really find a place for the kind of thinking that I was used to and the community that I once had. I think that's sort of the very beginning of maybe how it began. And it just, for about a year, it gradually just got more intense and started to feel like I couldn't connect to reality. And part of me was actually kind of worried about how absurd it would sound to explain this to somebody. And, for some time I was like, maybe this is what depression feels like or anxiety or something. But yeah, the longer I experienced it, the more clear it became to me that these feelings were really about just like connecting with the world and connecting with reality, and that I just sometimes just felt so disattached. Not even just in the moment, but also when trying to recall like memories, like remembering things that like recently happened to me. And oftentimes I'd feel like those weren't my own experiences. They weren't my own memories. It began kind of gradually when I had to make this like big transition into the workforce and figure out what I wanted to do for my career. But thinking about these questions about how I'm really connected to the world has always been a part of like sort of who I am, I think. I feel like in some way it was always there, but it didn't really become an issue until much later. So yeah, I experience derealization, I would say, a lot more, and it does affect the way that I operate in the world socially. I think I have, I am a social person, but I do have trouble connecting sometimes, especially with memory. Like I have a lot of trouble remembering things, even though, I'm emotionally there and do really care. Like sometimes I just feel like extreme things are not trivial, but they don't have the same weight as they maybe would to somebody else, even if they're events that occur in my own life, like to me. So it sort of feels like sometimes a bit of passivity in how I feel about things or how I'm experiencing them, and then only upon reflection later do I really like build it up as an experience that's really, really meaningful. Sometimes it takes me a bit longer to process events and other people's circumstances or my own circumstances. And I do have a little bit of a fear sometimes that it can be misunderstood by others as like a sort of aloofness or like carelessness, but I do genuinely have emotions and feelings. So I had a really rough period of about a year and a half. And that's a time of my life that I remember like in a very like discrete time window having the experiences of depersonalization and derealization. I don't think it ever truly went away. There are periods of time where it gets better and gets worse, and it's definitely has been better since that time of my life. So, if I were to say like how many times it happened, I would probably say, well, once kind of, but it's always happening too. It just gets better and worse, and I'm not sure what the like predictors are in what sort of prompts it. I don't talk about my experiences with other people basically ever. I have talked about it in two people that I am really close with and really trust a few times, like it's come up, and I've tried to, especially explain depersonalization and derealization during the most intense period that I felt it, that I felt like, oh, I'm sort of trapped. But I would not say I talk to people regularly about it. And I think there's some aspect of like, and maybe you can kind of see this while I'm talking, I'm hesitant to like even just say that, these are things that I feel, because I feel like it would be misconstrued. Or maybe even like that there's some aspect of it that like makes me like not a good person, or like not as good of a person as I should be. And like that does make me feel guilty sometimes. So I think it prevents me from opening up about it and like talking to people about it. But at the same time, I really strongly believe that people shouldn't be ashamed about it, and that more people have to talk about it. Like, I think part of the reason that I do feel this is that it's very like, it's not very well understood. And so that fear of like being misunderstood can be a little bit tough. It's just so hard to explain in a way where it's going to be judgment-free. So nobody that I told about my experiences did judge me in that way. So I think it might just be like a fear on my end that's not actually something that people need to genuinely fear. Because the 2 or 3 people that I did talk to about this were very like understanding, and it's just something that can be hard to talk about regardless, because you never know how people are gonna like react or think about what you're saying or misconstrue it. I do know someone who has experienced DPDR. He is a dear friend of mine, and he's also very interested in philosophy and like questions about the world and life and meaning, like similar interests to actually that's how we became friends, and we had talked about this at some point. He has a very different, or had a very different experience than I did, especially at the onset of his experiences. They were a lot more sudden and drastic, whereas for me it was a lot more gradual. I think part of what got me to feel better, and this was all very gradual, like the onset was gradual, I got better gradually, there was nothing that I could really pinpoint as like something that was a solid example of what helped, or something that could have triggered it. But maybe just to put it succinctly, I would say set realistic goals for yourself, and take care of your body, take care of your mind, whether it's seeking help from somebody else, whether it's friends or like a professional. I did mention before that like I did feel like disembodied, like I was outside of my body. And so like doing things with my body, whether it was dancing or working out, doing physical things with my body, helped me feel like I was in it. Focusing on something, feeling like I was getting really good at learning something new that I didn't know, helped me channel all of that like over intellectualizing and like thinking about things all the time to something that was like productive. And if you do pursue those things that you care about and you are engrossed in them, you will like, you know, be connected to the communities that also care about those things. And yeah, like channeling that energy into something positive. And I believe that you can truly do that. Like I have done that, and I think in some ways it's made me who I am, I would say.